In today's class, we're going to look at how to solve simultaneous equations by substitution. So the types of questions you get in your junior cert can include this, where you'll be told to solve for x and y, and you'll be given two equations. So our first equation here is x plus y is equal to 5, and our second equation is x minus y is equal to -1. They are our two equations. So our first step to solve these is to isolate one variable. Now when I say isolate one variable, I mean I isolate one letter in one of the equations. So I'll take the first equation, which is x plus y is equal to 5. So I can take that equation and I can isolate y. So if I isolate y, that means I want to have y on one side of the equation and everything else on the other side of the equation. So I want to have y is equal to something. Now for me to do that, I need to say x plus y is equal to 5, and I want to subtract x from both sides of this equation. So once I subtract x from both sides of this equation, this positive x and this negative x will cancel each other out. Then I'll be left with just a y is equal to 5 minus x. That's my first step completed, and I'll have about a third of the marks in the junior cert for getting that much done. My next step is to substitute in the variable. Now, when we use substitution, we need to use brackets. So our variable is y is equal to 5 minus x, and I need to substitute that in to the other equation. So it's substitute in the variable into the other equation. Now if we look up here again, I started with x plus y is equal to 5. So that's the equation I used. I'm going to now have to use the other one, which is x minus y is equal to -1. So I want to substitute in y is equal to 5 minus x. So for me to substitute that in, I'll take any y I had, I'm going to replace it with a bracket. And inside that bracket goes the 5 minus x. Because we have said that y is equal to 5 minus x. Now we just need to multiply out the brackets. We have minus outside the bracket, so that means we multiplied everything inside the bracket by a negative sign, or by a -1. So that gives us x minus 5 plus x is equal to -6. Now, once we have that done, we have about half the marks in the bag, even before we multiply out that bracket. So our third step, I've already done it, but that is to multiply out the bracket. So we're well over half the marks now at this point. So the next thing we need to do is we say, okay, well, we almost are there. So we have x minus 5 plus x equal to -1. So we need to tidy up first of all. So we have two x's on the left. Minus 5 is equal to -1. So what we want to do now is we want to isolate the only variable. Because if we look here now, we started with an equation that had x's and y's. Now we only have x's in it. So we can bring this and we can say, well, I need to add 5 to both sides of this equation. And then I'm left with 2x is equal to 4. Then I'll have to divide both sides by 2, because 2 is the coefficient of x. And I'm left with x is equal to 2. So now I found out what one of the variables is. So my fifth step is to sub the value for the variable into an equation. So I have x is equal to 2, and I'm going to substitute that into one of the original equations I started off with. So one of them I might pick could be x plus y is equal to 5. It doesn't matter which one I pick right now. So I say x plus y is equal to 5. And then where I had x, I replaced that with a 2 in a bracket. And I'll have y plus 2 is equal to 5. And then if y plus 2 is equal to 5, I'll have to take 2 away from both sides to balance the equation. And that means we'll be left with y is equal to 3. So now we've solved it, because we know x is equal to 2, y is equal to 3, so that means that's solved. And we can check our answer by substituting in 2 and 3 for x and y respectively in both equations. Next, I'm going to look at a trickier one now. So in this one, we have to be careful. Whenever we're using this method, we have to make sure we pick one that has a coefficient of 1. So we couldn't use the 3w because that w has a 3 in front of it. Its coefficient is 3. That can't be used. The ones that have a negative 1 would be a bit more awkward. So our preference is going to be to try and isolate this z. So I'm going to write out that equation again. So I have 3w plus z is equal to 7. And I want to isolate the z. So in order to do that, I have to take the 3w to the other side of the equation. Now to do that, I'll have to subtract 3w from the left-hand side of the equation. In order to be allowed to do that, I'll have to subtract 3w from the left-hand side as well. The right-hand side as well. Now these two cancel each other out, and our equation is going to be z is equal to 7 minus 3w. That's the variable z isolated for us again. Now, our next step is to take the other equation which we didn't use, which in this case was minus w minus z is equal to 5. We've isolated z. So we're going to have to take this z and replace it with 7 minus 3w. So we have minus w minus 7 minus 3w is equal to 5. Now we have to be very careful to make sure we multiply out the bracket correctly. So our minus w won't be affected, but now we have this minus outside the bracket, which is the same as if we had a minus 1. So that minus 1 is to be multiplied by everything inside the bracket. So first off, we have minus 1 multiplied by 7 is minus 7. Then we have minus 1 multiplied by minus 3w. Well, that's a negative number by a negative number, which gives us a positive. Then we have 1 by 3 gives us a 3, and then we have w. And that's equal to the 5. Now our next line, we're going to tidy things up, so we'll have 3w minus 7 is equal to 5. So that's 2w minus 7 is equal to 5. That minus 7, we want variables on one side of the equation and numbers on the other. So now we're going to add 7 on the left-hand side. That'll cancel out the negative 7. But to do that, we have to add 7 to the other side of the equation as well. So now we have 2w is equal to 12. Now we're almost there at this point. What we have to do next is we have to take the 2w and we have to notice what's the number in front of the variable. So the number in front of the variable for us is a 2. So that means we're going to divide this side by 2, and then that means those 2's will cancel, and we'll be left with a w is equal to. In order to do that, we'll have to do the same thing on the other side. Then we have 12 divided by 2, which is 6. So now we found one of our variables, which is w is equal to 6. Now, if we go up and we look at our equations, we can pick either one we want. I'm going to pick the first one, which was 3w plus z is equal to 7. And I'm going to replace the w now with a 6. So I have 3 times 6 plus z is equal to 7. So 3 times 6 is 18 plus z is equal to 7. Now we're almost there. We've almost isolated the other variable. So we have z plus 18 is equal to 7. Now I'm going to have to subtract 18 from both sides. Once I subtract 18 from both sides, these two will cancel, and I'll be left with z is equal to 7 minus 18, which is minus 11. Now, once again, we have w is equal to 6, z is equal to minus 11. That means we have now solved our simultaneous equation. We found out a value for both variables. Now, the questions you guys to complete by the 31st of March are these 8 questions from your book and then this one exam question. Now, these 8 questions from your book, I've already completed question 1 and question 8. You should be able to write them out and solve them for yourselves using the steps I took. Then you should try